They tell you there's a ceiling. They tell you that you were born into a certain place, into a certain family, and because of that, there are limits on how far you can go. They say people like you don't reach that level, don't get that job, don't create that business, don't make it out. And somewhere deep inside, you've started to wonder if maybe they're right. Because every time you've tried to push further, there's been resistance. Every time you've wanted more, the voices, outside and inside, reminded you of your so-called limits. But here's the truth. The only limit that has the power to control your life is the one you accept. You see, limits are like walls in your mind. Some were built by other people, parents who didn't believe, teachers who doubted, friends who laughed at your dreams. And some, whether you realize it or not, were built by you. Every time you said, "I can't," you added another brick. Every time you said, "It's too hard," another layer of cement. Until eventually, the walls closed in, and you believed that was the size of your world. But look closer. These walls, they're not made of steel. They're not unbreakable. They're paper-thin illusions, built from fear, doubt, and the opinions of others. And the moment you stop accepting them as truth, you realize they can't hold you back anymore. Think about it. Every person who has ever done something extraordinary started by rejecting the limits placed on them. Thomas Edison was told he was too stupid to learn anything. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. Oprah Winfrey was fired from her first television job because she was told she wasn't fit for TV. And yet, what did they all do? They refused to accept someone else's definition of their limits. That's the difference. They saw the wall, but they didn't let it become their prison. They chose to see the open sky above it. Maybe you've been living inside someone else's version of what's possible for you. Maybe they told you that people from your background don't succeed, that you're not smart enough, that you're too old, too young, too late, too inexperienced. And maybe you've started to believe them. But let me ask you something. When did their opinion become your destiny? When did their ceiling become your sky? Every great story begins with someone daring to believe they are capable of more than the world tells them. That's what makes the journey so powerful. You have to decide, are you going to let limits define you, or will you define what's possible? Because here's what you need to hear right now. You are more powerful than you know. Inside you is a strength that hasn't even been touched yet. Inside you are dreams that are waiting, begging, to be brought to life. But those dreams will never happen if you keep accepting limits that don't belong to you. Think about the moments you've already survived. The heartbreaks, the failures, the nights you thought you wouldn't make it to the next morning. And yet, here you are, still standing, still breathing, still fighting. That means the strength is already there. You've already proven you can survive more than most people would dare to face. So why not prove you can rise too? Limits lose their power the moment you stop bowing down to them. When you decide, this isn't where my story ends, everything changes. The fear that used to paralyze you becomes fuel. The voices that used to break you become background noise. And the walls that once trapped you crumble under the weight of your determination. The truth is, you don't need permission. You don't need approval. You don't need the world to understand your vision. You only need to stop accepting the limits they hand you. Because the moment you do, your whole life shifts. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" and start asking, "How will I do this?" You stop waiting for the perfect time and start creating it. You stop letting fear write your story and start writing it yourself. And when you do, when you finally step outside the box they tried to keep you in, you'll see what you were capable of all along. Not just surviving, but thriving. Not just existing, but building a life so bold, so unstoppable, that the very people who doubted you will have no choice but to watch in awe. Remember this, the only limit that can hold you is the one you accept. So stop accepting it. There's a moment in every person's life when they face a crossroads. One path looks familiar, safe, and predictable. It's the path where you keep the limits you've been handed. It's the road everyone else expects you to take. You know exactly where it goes because you've seen others walk it. It leads to mediocrity, to regret, to the quiet ache of never knowing what you could have been. And then there's the other path, the one that terrifies you. The one where you're forced to face your fears, your doubts, your insecurities. The one that demands sacrifice, long nights, and endless resilience. But it's also the path of transformation, of power, of legacy. It's the path where you tear down the limits you once accepted and rewrite the ending of your story. Most people choose the first path. They convince themselves it's easier. They say things like, maybe I wasn't meant for more, or it's too late for me. They make peace with the limits that were never theirs in the first place. They settle into cages with doors that were always unlocked. But not you. You felt the whisper in your soul, the voice that keeps telling you there's more. That whisper isn't a lie. It's your truth trying to break free. Think about it. If limits were real, how do you explain the people who came from nothing and rose to greatness? People born into poverty who became billionaires. People born into broken homes who became world leaders. People told, "You can't," who turned that phrase into "watch me." Their circumstances didn't change first, their mindset did. The story of Sylvester Stallone is a perfect example. Before Rocky made him a household name, Stallone was broke, rejected over 1,000 times, even forced to sell his dog just to survive. Every door closed on him. Every voice said no. But he refused to accept that rejection as the end of his story. He wrote Rocky, demanded to play the lead role, and bet everything on himself. The result? He went from nobody to legend. Why? Because he refused to accept the limits others placed on him. Now let me turn the question on you. What limits have you been accepting without realizing it? Maybe someone told you that you weren't smart enough for college, so you stopped dreaming of it. Maybe you grew up hearing, "People like us don't get ahead," so you lowered your expectations. Maybe you failed once or twice, and instead of seeing those failures as stepping stones, you convinced yourself they were proof you weren't good enough. But here's the truth you need to face. Those limits only exist because you accepted them. You've been carrying chains that were never locked. You've been holding keys you never used. Do you know what separates people who break through from those who don't? It's not talent. It's not luck. It's belief. Unshakable belief that they are capable of more, even when no one else sees it. Especially when no one else sees it. You have to become your own proof. You have to be the one to look at the mirror and say, "I refuse to be defined by limits I didn't create." You have to be willing to push further than you thought possible, to go after the dream even when it scares you, to take the step even when the ground looks shaky. And yes, it will be hard. There will be nights when you question everything. There will be setbacks that make you wonder if it's worth it. There will be voices, loud, constant voices, telling you to stop. But here's the secret. Those moments are the proof you're on the right path. Because limits don't fight back when you're standing still. They fight back when you're breaking through. Imagine a bird born in a cage. For years, it believes the cage is its world. One day, the door is left open. At first, the bird doesn't fly out, because the limit of the cage has been accepted so deeply that it doesn't realize freedom is possible. That's most people. They stay in cages that no longer exist. But then there's you. You've realized the door is open. And even though flying into the unknown is terrifying, deep down you know it's what you were made for. The truth is, you'll never know what you're capable of until you stop letting limits define you. Until you take the leap. Until you face the fear. Until you choose growth over comfort. Because comfort is a slow poison. It convinces you that limits are easier to live with than dreams. But dreams don't die quietly. They live inside you, restless, waiting, until you finally decide to honor them. And when you do, everything changes. The life you thought was impossible starts becoming real. The future you thought was reserved for other people becomes your reality. Not because the world changed, but because you stopped accepting less than you were capable of. So here's the challenge. The next time you hear that voice in your head whispering, "I can't," I want you to ask yourself, who told me that? And why did I believe them? Because chances are, the voice isn't yours. It's someone else's fear disguised as your truth. Reject it. Replace it. Rewrite it. Because your only limit, the only one that has any power at all, is the one you accept. Here's the harsh truth. Life doesn't hand you permission slips to chase your dreams. It doesn't pat you on the back and say, "Go ahead, this is your time." Life tests you. It throws obstacles, failures, heartbreaks, and fear in your path, almost daring you to give up. And most people do. They face a wall once, twice, maybe 3 times, and decide that wall is permanent. They label it a limit and spend the rest of their lives walking around it instead of breaking through. But what if you saw limits differently? What if you treated them not as permanent walls, but as challenges, tests designed to see how badly you want it? That's the shift. That's the mindset that separates winners from everyone else. Winners don't see limits as endings. They see them as invitations to grow stronger, smarter, and bolder. Every limit becomes a classroom where resilience is taught, where persistence is built, where character is forged. Think of a runner training for a marathon. The first few miles feel impossible. The lungs burn, the legs ache, the body screams, "Stop." That's the limit. But what happens when the runner pushes through instead of stopping? Endurance grows. Speed improves. Limits that once seemed immovable are shattered and replaced by new ones. And again, those too are broken. That's life. Every limit is temporary, as long as you don't accept it as final. Now let's get real. Right now, you have limits you've accepted without question. Maybe you believe you can't make more money because you weren't born into wealth. Maybe you think you'll never be truly happy because of what happened in your past. Maybe you've convinced yourself that success is for other people. But none of that is truth. It's conditioning. It's the stories you've been told, repeated so many times that you started to repeat them to yourself. And once you did, you began to live them. Because here's something most people never realize. Your brain is always listening to your words. Every "I can't" becomes a command. Every "I'm not good enough" becomes a program. Over time, your brain turns those limits into reality. But the opposite is also true. Change the words, change the program. Replace "I can't" with "I will." Replace "I'm not enough" with "I'm more than capable." Replace "It's impossible" with "I'll find a way." Your brain begins to shift. Your actions follow. And suddenly, the limits that seemed impossible begin to fade. Take J.K. Rowling, for example. Before Harry Potter became a global phenomenon, she was broke, depressed, and rejected by multiple publishers. By all accounts, her situation screamed limit. But she refused to accept it. She kept writing, kept submitting, kept believing in the story she carried inside her. And the world eventually caught up to her vision. The same goes for Elon Musk, who was laughed at for dreaming of electric cars and rockets. Or Walt Disney, who was once told he lacked imagination. Each of them faced limits, but none of them accepted those limits as final. They used them as fuel. Now imagine this. If the people you admire most had accepted their limits, you would have never heard their names. Their impact, their legacy, their greatness, it all would have died in silence. And here's the bigger truth. The same applies to you. There are people waiting on the other side of your limits. People whose lives will be changed because you refuse to settle. Maybe it's your family, maybe it's your community, maybe it's the world. But you'll never know until you decide not to accept what you've been told. Limits aren't destroyed in one grand gesture. They're dismantled one decision at a time. When you wake up early instead of hitting snooze, you break a limit. When you put in the work instead of procrastinating, you break a limit. When you say yes to opportunities that scare you, you break a limit. It's in those small, daily choices where the cage begins to crack and freedom starts to shine through. And let's be clear, this isn't about pretending limits don't exist. They do. You will face challenges. You will encounter real obstacles. But the difference is this. You don't have to accept them as permanent. You can see them for what they are, temporary barriers designed to reveal how badly you want the life you claim to desire. So ask yourself, are you living inside a limit that doesn't belong to you? Are you letting someone else's opinion define your future? Are you allowing fear to write your story? If the answer is yes, then this is your wake-up call. Because you don't rise by waiting for the world to hand you freedom. You rise by taking it. By declaring that no one, not family, not friends, not strangers, not even your own doubts, gets to decide where your story ends. Only you do. Think about it like this. Life is offering you two choices every single day. Option 1. Stay where you are, accept the limits, and wonder for the rest of your life what might have been. Option 2. Step up, reject the limits, and create a life that proves nothing can stop you. Which option will you choose? Because your destiny isn't written by limits. It's written by belief. And belief, once chosen, becomes unstoppable. Picture this. You're standing at the edge of a cliff, and on the other side is everything you've ever wanted. Success, freedom, fulfillment, a life that finally feels like yours. But between where you are and where you want to be is a wide canyon, the space where your fears, doubts, and limits live. Most people take one look at that canyon and turn back. They say, it's too far. I'll never make it. And so they settle, choosing comfort over courage, safety over significance. But there are a few, just a few, who decide to leap. They don't know exactly how they'll make it across. They don't have all the answers, but they jump anyway. And when they do, something incredible happens. The wings they never realized they had begin to unfold. That's when they discover the truth. The limit was never the canyon. The limit was the belief that they couldn't fly. That's you. You've been standing at that edge for too long, staring at the gap, telling yourself it's impossible. But deep inside, you know the leap is the only way forward. The question is, will you jump? Let's be real, the leap is terrifying. Chasing your dreams will cost you. It will cost you comfort, relationships with people who don't believe in you, and the illusion of certainty. It will demand sacrifices that few are willing to make. But what you get in return is worth everything. You get freedom. You get power. You get the chance to prove to yourself that you were capable all along. Every story of greatness comes with sacrifice. The athlete who wakes up at 4 a.m. while everyone else is asleep. The entrepreneur who risks everything to build a vision no one else understands. The single parent who works 2 jobs and still finds time to study at night, building a better future one exhausted page at a time. These people don't have fewer limits. They have the same ones you do. The difference is, they refuse to accept them. Think of it this way. Your limits aren't there to stop you. They're there to ask you a question. How badly do you want it? And your answer is not in your words. It's in your actions. It's in whether you keep going when you're tired. It's in whether you keep believing when no one else does. It's in whether you take one more step, one more risk, one more leap, even when the ground feels unsteady. Because here's the thing most people miss. The limit isn't really the obstacle. It's the belief about the obstacle. 2 people can face the same wall. One will say, "This wall means I can't go further." The other will say, "This wall is just a test of how creative, how persistent, how relentless I can be." The wall doesn't decide the outcome. The mindset does. And your mindset is entirely in your control. But let's not sugarcoat it. Breaking limits hurts. It's lonely. It's confusing. There will be days when you wonder if it's even worth it. You'll question your own sanity. You'll feel the weight of every no you've ever heard pressing down on your chest. And in those moments, you'll be tempted to go back to the cage, to shrink, to settle, to accept. But if you do, you'll never know who you could have become. Imagine 10 years from now, sitting in the same place you are today, knowing you had dreams you never chased because you accepted limits that were never real. That kind of regret will eat you alive. But the opposite is also true. 10 years from now, you could be standing in a life you built with your own hands. A life where you look back and say, "I didn't let limits stop me. I broke them." So which future do you want to live? Remember this. The people who told you you can't weren't prophets. They were projecting their own limits onto you. They couldn't see it for themselves, so they couldn't see it for you. But that's their story, not yours. You don't have to live inside their small vision. You don't have to carry their doubt. You don't have to settle for a cage when you were made for the sky. Your life is proof in the making. Proof that limits are illusions. Proof that belief is stronger than fear. Proof that resilience is greater than rejection. And when you finally rise, when you finally push through and break the limits you once accepted, you become a light for others still trapped in their cages. Because that's the beauty of breaking your own limits. It doesn't just free you. It shows others what's possible. It gives them courage to try. It plants the seed that maybe, just maybe, the limits they've accepted aren't real either. So yes, the leap is terrifying. Yes, it will cost you. But ask yourself this. Isn't a life of freedom, greatness, and impact worth the price? Isn't the chance to become everything you were meant to be worth the risk of failure? Isn't the possibility of inspiring generations worth the pain of sacrifice? Because at the end of the day, it comes down to this. Will you continue to accept limits, or will you rise above them? Your future depends on the choice you make right now. This is it, the moment where everything comes together. You've carried the weight of your doubts. You've fought through storms that should have broken you. You've stared at walls that felt too high to climb. And still, you're here. That's proof. Proof that your limits aren't permanent. Proof that your spirit is stronger than the chains that tried to hold you back. But now comes the decision that will define you. Will you keep living inside the cage of limits? Or will you break free once and for all? Understand this. Limits don't vanish on their own. Fear doesn't disappear because you wait. Doubt doesn't dissolve because you ignore it. The only way to destroy limits is to face them head on, to look them in the eye and say, "You don't control me anymore." That means action. Relentless, unapologetic, consistent action. Maybe you want to start that business, but you've been waiting for the perfect time. Newsflash, there is no perfect time. The perfect time is when you decide. Maybe you want to get in the best shape of your life, but you keep telling yourself tomorrow. Tomorrow isn't promised. Maybe you want to write that book, start that channel, chase that career, but the little voice inside keeps whispering. What if you fail? Let me ask you, what if you succeed? What if the very thing you're afraid of doing becomes the thing that changes your life forever? Think about every great person you admire. Athletes, artists, leaders, innovators. None of them were superhuman. They were ordinary people who decided not to accept limits. They chose courage over comfort. They chose to act even when they were terrified. And because of that, they built lives that echo beyond their own. That choice is in your hands too. Here's the truth. Success doesn't belong to the chosen few. It belongs to the relentless few. The ones who keep going when everyone else quits. The ones who believe in themselves even when no one else does. The ones who are willing to trade short-term comfort for long-term greatness. You've already proven you're stronger than you think. Every scar, every setback, every heartbreak is evidence that you're still standing. You've survived 100% of your worst days so far. And if you can survive the pain of the past, you can conquer the limits of the future. But don't just survive. Rise. Rise into the person who refuses to settle. Rise into the version of yourself that your younger self dreamed about. Rise into the leader, the fighter, the warrior you were always meant to be. And remember this. When you rise, you don't rise alone. You carry others with you. Your courage becomes their courage. Your strength becomes their inspiration. Your story becomes the proof that they, too, can break free. So today, draw a line in the sand. Decide that you will no longer accept the limits placed on you by society, by your past, by your fear, or by yourself. Decide that from this moment forward, you will act like someone who knows their worth. Someone who knows their potential. Someone who refuses to quit until the dream is real. Because here's the secret. The world doesn't give freedom to those who wait. It gives it to those who fight. And you? You were born to fight. Born to conquer. Born to rise. So get up. Chase it. Build it. Live it. Break every single limit that ever tried to stop you. And when you do, you'll look back and realize something powerful. The only limit you ever had was the one you accepted. But not anymore. Your time is now. Your story is waiting. Your greatness is calling. So answer it. Don't wait another day living inside a cage that was never locked. Break free. Take the leap and prove to the world and to yourself that your only limit is the one you accept. Now go. Your future won't wait.